explain the background to this. So I'm Mark Edwards. I'm the chairman of Track with Ease, and I'm going to be interviewing today Ashley Molson. So Ashley, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Molson, and I'm a real estate attorney in New Jersey. And I've had a virtual law practice since I opened my law firm. So I've been using Track with Ease and working virtually, and I'm really excited to share with you guys how it's set up and answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, so I think really just to outline the agenda, obviously Track with Ease is a transaction management system which allows attorneys to work more efficiently in terms of doing real estate transactions, real estate closings, and to collaborate with all the various stakeholders on the transaction in a seamless fashion. But obviously today we're living in some extraordinary times. We have challenges with the coronavirus, which is obviously putting a lot of stress in terms of working practices. We aren't able to go into the offices so readily or at all, and we don't know for sure how long that situation is going to continue. You know, it could be a few months, it could be 6 months, it could be maybe a year on and off until the vaccine is created. So I think one of the things for sure is that this period of time is going to have some maybe lasting impacts in terms of the way people work in general, and some impact in terms of teleworking. I think in all kinds of jobs, people will be probably more. There'll be more home working or flexible working in the future, because a lot of the tools and solutions will be really used to a high extent during this time, and also improved and fine-tuned. And so really the purpose of this webinar is primarily to talk to Ashley. Ashley is a successful real estate attorney, and she's created a business where she's embraced this idea of virtual working, you know, right as she's mentioned, right from the get-go. And she's made that work very, very effectively. She's been able to grow her practice and increase the number of transactions that she's able to manage every year. And so we thought it would be helpful to ask her various questions. How she succeeded in terms of building a practice that where people are coming in working remotely. And what are some of the things that she's learned? What are the challenges? What are the things that she recommends to be successful, and so on. So I'm going to ask a series of questions. So Ashley will give her thoughts, and then at the end, I'd like to invite you to write down any questions that you have in the chat box you'll see in the Zoom session. And then I will ask the questions on your behalf to Ashley as well. So let's just sort of get right into it then. I think the video seems to have paused for some reason.
I'm seeing Fred Getz was sharing his screen, which is probably not a good idea.
Right. Great. Okay. So, right. So Ashley, maybe to start with, you can just give us a little bit of background. Tell us more about your current practice. What was your idea at the beginning in terms of how you wanted to set it up,
Mm-hmm.
and how is it working virtually now in the current environment?
Sure. So when I was building my law practice and before I opened it, my reason for wanting to be virtual was so that I could have the lifestyle that I wanted, which was to be able to work from home, be able to travel, and also be convenient for my clients. I had spent a lot of time in my life commuting from New Jersey to New York and kind of living that commuter life. And it took up a lot of my time and my energy. And I felt like I learned, I guess, very soon on in my career that working from home and cutting that time out, and just like the idea of going and traveling to a place to work, that I would be more effective. So my vision for my practice from when I started it was to be virtual. So I spent a lot of time researching the technologies that I would need in order to do that. And I also researched a lot of the problems that would come with it and kind of how to be prepared for that. So my current practice is similar to the way that it was when I started, but now I have finessed the technology and I think the customer service element and made it much more high touch than it was when I first started, which was just a little bit more bare bones because I was just getting started. But now I've learned how to implement a lot of different tools so that it's not just about being virtual, but my firm has a very large focus on customer service and using the technology to our advantage to bring answers and convenience and communication to our clients in as effective a manner as possible. So right now, and literally just as of, I think, a couple weeks ago, I can say I'm 100% virtual. And that last piece that I had remaining was my mail, which was, I think, the only thing kind of pinning me down to a certain location, which was getting mail delivered. But since about a few weeks ago, I've set up with the virtual mail system that I just received my first email today, actually, and I can't explain how glorious it feels to know that my mail is being taken care of. So I think it's been like a journey and a progression, but since COVID-19, the incentive to really just make everything as virtual as possible has been there. And so I was researching as much as I could what was left and trying to kind of knock those tangents off so that I could be 100% virtual.
So in terms of the technology stack and let's say the various different needs that you identified up front, what were the kinds of things that you were looking, you were trying to find a solution for?
So looking for a solution in the beginning when it was just me, I now have a team that works with me, but when it was just myself, thinking about the document flow, how I would store my documents and how I would communicate with clients, what type of a system I would use to communicate with my clients, like via phone. I think I started out with a Google Voice number. I now have a completely different system, but making sure that my clients didn't have like my personal cell phone number and that I had like an actual office line. And really, I mean, it's very easy to be virtual because all I need is my laptop and my email. But as I got more successful, the more important thing that was really, really very, very important was document management and software for storing files and having access to them, and having access to them in a way where I could essentially not have to share like a Google Drive link with my clients, because that's just not professional. So making it seem like there's somewhere where my clients can access everything that I have for them that I need to share with them. And then also not just my clients, but the parties that I relate with. But really, it's it's not too complicated as far as getting started and getting yourself set up. There's a lot of fancy things that you can add in, and I can go into that, especially as you have a team. But if it's just you, it's actually relatively simple what you need. You just need a means of communicating with your clients, an email and email storage that's encrypted, and the ability to send documents to be signed by your clients. That's really important so that they can sign things electronically. And then the last thing would be the storage of files and where things are organized.
Okay, so you have effectively, there's like let's say a virtual office portal where you can share documents, share information.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that impact? Often, I mean, speaking personally, when I've been involved with real estate transactions, I find myself chasing the attorney quite often, and trying to find out what's the status of this,
Mm-hmm.
what's the status of that. Has this been done? Has that been done?
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine for a busy attorney that must be quite. It probably doesn't help matters when you have your clients all trying to chase and find out what the status of various different items are. So how has this type of setup that you have changed your responsiveness to clients?
Mm-hmm. Well, really, Track with Ease has solved that for me. I think without that, I would still have to be very proactive about sharing with clients what I'm doing. But Track with Ease has the milestones that are shared with clients when they log into their portal on their track on Track with Ease. And it shows like what's been completed, what's still outstanding, what's due when. Really, before Track with Ease, I was looking for something that did that for me because I essentially was either being chased or chasing myself and having to update clients with what I was doing so that they felt clear and like we were communicating with them about what they needed and what was being done. And another thing that we do, not just having the milestones there passively, but my team on Fridays, we send out a milestone update email to all the clients that we have and all the parties on the transaction. We've selected the important milestones, so we don't put everything on there, but just the really, really important ones that everybody's worried about. Every Friday, we send them an email showing them that this is what's happened this week, this is what's still left over, and literally every Friday afternoon, we get people responding to us, like lenders telling us that, oh, they'll have the commitment next week, or thank you for this is great, we're really happy that you sent us this because we were a little concerned that we hadn't heard anything. And attorneys, we all understand that for us, we might have lulls where like things haven't moved on our files, and so therefore we're not talking to our clients because we don't have any updates for them. But having those milestones and the ability to send that milestone update email, it's kind of a way of touching them and letting them know that you're thinking about them, even though you don't have a real concrete update because you're still waiting for things. And I found that a lot of client disappointment can come from them just not hearing from you. Even if you have nothing to tell them, they don't know that. So I think that that's been a huge game changer for me and has been really, really helpful for communicating those things and not being chased. I'm chased so much less now than I used to be.
And in terms of creating those updates to proactively let everybody know status, how much work is it to do that?
Well, it takes maybe 3 minutes per file. So depending on how many files you have, I have a template message that I have my staff just copy and paste into the milestone update email. And it's very fluffy. It's like, we're so happy to update you. This is how we're doing. As far as your transaction goes, every Friday, we're going to send you this update. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, things like that. But they just copy and paste it and send it out. And I think it just depends on how many files you have. But I'd say my team finishes it they start at maybe at 10 a.m. They finish by 12 p.m. It takes them about 2 hours or so to get everything out the door.
So I guess you're taking the Track with Ease creates an automated milestone update. So you're sort of taking that and putting it with your, I guess, personalized branding of your firm.
Yeah, and we're doing it so it's not automated, it's like intentional. And the key to that before that is to make sure that you're updated, right? So you want to make sure that your files have the milestones checked off that need to be checked off. Because Track with Ease is a tool, so it's there for you, but if you don't use it, it's not going to be helpful, right? You have to use it to your advantage. So if you're not updating it and keeping everything organized as you go, sending out that milestone email might take a little bit longer. But as long as you're consistent with communicating with the program, then you can really utilize it to your advantage and not have it take up much of your time.
So a question about realtors and your relationship with realtors. How's the nature of your business and how you're running it now? How's the relationship with realtors changed?
So my relationship with realtors has been, it's since the beginning, I've been virtual and working from home. So if they ask me, like, if they can come to my office, I always tell them we can meet at a coffee shop instead. So that's how I was basically networking with them or interacting with them. But over time, they've learned that they don't really need to see me in person to know that I'm doing what I need to do. They don't need to see me in person to have a good relationship with me because I'm constantly updating them on our files. We reach out to them constantly to catch up with them and see how they're doing. And now with COVID, of course, everyone's forced to be virtual, but because we've had the ability to, not the ability, but we haven't changed our processes at all. They're really happy because they know that nothing's changed for us. We haven't closed our doors. We haven't needed time to go remote. We haven't had any shift of practice except closings. And now with closings, what I'm doing is setting up these Zoom conferences with my clients. And I've contacted the title companies that I work with, made sure that they have a computer that they can put in the closing room. And I send them the link to the Zoom and they log in and they have the computer set up where I can see the closer and I can see the client. And we've been doing closings with Zoom and they've loved it because the realtors, a lot of the realtors I work with like to be there. So they sign in and it's really nice. It's definitely not the same as being at the closing and being able to congratulate the client in person, but I think that there's going to be a huge shift to closing in this manner and keeping it that way even after things get better. Just because of for my office, it's actually so much better for me to be on Zoom because if there's say a walkthrough issue, I can be in the Zoom room, but also at the same time emailing the attorney for the other side, communicating with them, helping resolve that issue while not interrupting the closing process. So it's more efficient and effective to actually have me not at the closing table, but there, to support the client.
Do you think it's going to have a permanent impact in terms, even after the virus is behind us? You think that the nature of closings could permanently change?
Yeah, I think that there's been, not that I think, I know there's been a lot of people advocating for the virtual closing in general and online remote notarization. And there's been a big wait for it to be signed into law that can be utilized. I think COVID is now putting that on the table to be signed into law more immediately. I know New York signed it into law like within 24 hours of the quarantine, but we're still waiting for it here to be official. But I think a lot of people want to do that, and I think that the trend has been that way. I actually had a couple lenders that I work with that are from other states that they do virtual closings. That's how they do it. So they actually were confused with me as to why I was like, we have to figure out some way to print the package and have the client be there. And they were like, why? We can have this done virtually. So there's a trend anyway, and I think that this is just going to escalate it to be more, I guess, of an emergency situation to make it happen, and it'll happen. I think it'll be more common, and it should be soon that we see most closings be virtual, and electronic signatures be allowed with the online notary.
Right. Okay. And in terms of the efficiency benefits that you get overall, I mean, maybe it's a little hard for you to answer, because it sounds like you've always approached it in this way, using technology to maximize the efficiency. But you obviously interact with a lot of other attorneys as well, some of which are, let's say, quite traditional, and maybe everything is more sort of paper based. Do you have a sense? Do you have a sense of how much more efficient you think that your approach? I mean, aside from the current situation, and obviously the convenience of being able to work remotely, the efficiency benefit is there anyway. And do you have a sense of what that difference is?
Well, I have one client right now who doesn't have email. So that actually forces me to use my virtual platform in a way that they don't interact with it. And I have a little bit of a, I guess, perspective from there. I mean, if you're working just with paper and you're setting up meetings with clients to have them come in to go over things like the inspection report and attorney review, there's just a lot more time that gets kind of factored into things being completed or tasks being completed. And the speed which a transaction would go forward is a lot slower. I think also just working with some offices that they definitely use email, but they aren't, working virtually. I've seen and felt a lag of communication and files being slower now, because they are like, well, I get autoresponders that say like, we're not in the office. We're answering things via email once or twice a day, and please excuse the delay. And then when they finally get back to us, they're like, well, we're only working a couple hours a week because we're not set up to be remote, and we have to factor that in with our clients. And long story short, it's taking a lot longer.
So why do you think some people, some firms are very, let's say, resistant, haven't really adapted to technology that's available to provide the kind of efficiency gains that you have?
I think my answer for that would be twofold. So the first is that in relation to right now, I think there's a perspective that this is going to end soon, and that the quarantine was just going to be 2 weeks, and that they'll just get back to the office and everything will be okay. Also, there's the perspective that maybe law firms will be considered essential businesses, and that we can all go into our offices and not be impacted by this as far as the quarantine mandate goes. And so there's just some resistance there, just I guess some like thoughts that it's just going to go away. But then beyond that, there's I think just an overall resistance that from I've seen when I would go networking and explain to people when they ask me where my law office is, and I say wherever I am and wherever my laptop is where my office is. It was very hard for people to understand that, like, that's really the truth, is that's my office. It's me and my laptop and the cloud. And so getting further into discussions with people about that, I kind of like don't see it. You know, it's like, but lawyers have offices, and that's like a whole hanging the shingle is like a part of what we're so excited to do when we graduate law school and when we go solo. If and I mean, larger corporations, and law firms, they have offices too, and it's just kind of the way that things have been done for a really long time. So seeing the freedom of virtual life is almost like it's too good to be true. And then at the same time, it's like, how do I get started? You know, and just feeling kind of lost as to what would I do? How do clients communicate with me? Like, all I have is my cell phone. You know, if I'm in my office, I at least have my office line. So problems like that, or I don't have a scanner. What kind of printer do I need? Like very basic things that take some thought, but really it's just not putting in like the time and the intention to make that actually happen.
Okay. So so I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that in a second, in terms of what you need to get started, what are the challenges in terms of setup. But before getting to that, I'm sure one question that is on the minds of many attorneys is about the ethical mandates that attorney needs to be aware of in the current situation. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I talk about pretty much just the big two. One is the communication with clients, the duty to communicate with clients effectively and to be there for them and not leave them hanging, essentially. The state bar mandates that you have access to your files, that you be able to provide documents to your clients, and that you don't disappear on them, that you're available for them. Of course, you know, that there's some grace that needs to be placed there, but there is a duty and an ethical obligation on attorneys to be there and to communicate with their clients effectively. And most ethical violations and the high percentage of ethical complaints is clients feeling like their attorney is not communicating with them and not answering them or responding to them. So in order to make sure that you don't put yourself at risk for any ethical complaints from clients, getting yourself set up in a way where you can communicate with them effectively is very important. And you just never know when a client's going to get bitter and feel like you're not taking care of them. And I mean, attorneys, we're all usually very worried about, you know, our ethical responsibilities, and that's a big one. Another one that is a big concern is just the confidentiality of documents. That's a really big one that I researched a lot when I was building my practice. It's not anything new. As of COVID, it's not anything new. As far as technology goes over the last couple of years, because not too much has changed, but making sure that you're working with encrypted software and communicating through email that's encrypted. It's not too complicated to find. You just have to make sure that you're doing it. So like Gmail, if you have a regular, you know, ashleymolson@gmail.com, that is not an encrypted email through Gmail. But if you have a G Suite account, which is a business account, that has end-to-end encryption. So protecting those files is very important and really, really a big concern for going virtual. And also password protection. I use a software called LastPass. It actually is just an extension for Chrome, but every single one of my passwords is gibberish and is 20 to 40 characters long. I have no idea what those passwords are, but every system that I use has a different password, and it's all stored and it's double encrypted. And that's been a huge lifesaver for me as far as not ever having any like suspicious activity in my accounts and things like that.
So sort of building on that, could you talk a little bit more about, you know, if somebody's thinking right now, okay, I mean, obviously the current situation is in many ways a sort of catalyst, but I think irrespective of the current situation, there's a lot of benefits in terms of having that flexibility and being able to work more efficiently and getting some of the benefits in terms of client touch that you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk about how does somebody really get started? What do they need to start off? What are the pieces of the solution that will, how do they quickly get started, and what are the key pieces that they need to put in place?
So I would recommend making sure that you're working with an email that is a business email, that is, again, something like a G Suite, or if you have a domain name for your website. So if you have, for me, it's molsonlawfirm.com. My email is ashley@molsonlawfirm.com, which means that the domain and the email are integrated with each other. So Google has a process for that, and I really think G Suite is really great for email, but a lot of attorneys like to work with Outlook as well.
It's any hosting domain with, it's like GoDaddy or some of those other solutions, you can do the same.
Yeah. I think it's not too complicated, and there's lots of different service providers for that. But at least just knowing that you have a business email set up, it's not like you're just setting up a free email on Gmail, which I guess you could use to get started, but it's better to have it attached to your domain because it's more like a business savvy decision to make. Then I would recommend having at home a good scanner and a good printer. And not everybody has to go to the level of having their mail be virtual, like myself. I want to be able to travel, so that's why I have that set up. But the ability to scan documents is really, really important. And along with the virtual aspect, I try to be as paperless as I can. So I scan everything that I need, and then I shred what I don't, which is quite a lot of it's a lot of the paperwork that I get I don't need the originals of. So a good scanner is really important. I can't survive without my good scanner. And then a printer. That's really important. And then the other thing is setting up some type of a phone system. So the one mistake that I made when I first started my practice was just giving out my cell phone number. And as I grew, I realized that I have clients that like to text me at 5 a.m. and then other clients that like to text me at 2 a.m. And I felt like I never had any space. And that's, I think, the luxury of having an office is you have kind of boundaries. So when you go virtual, you have to set up your boundaries. And the one way to do that is to have a separate phone system. So a VoIP, voice or VoIP, or I think it's, I don't even know what it stands for, voice. Yeah. So that, like a system like Vonage or Google Voice, those are systems that you can use you can even take your existing phone number, attach it to that VoIP, and then have it set up so that it's seamless. Clients don't notice anything different. So when I started my phone system where I took my personal number, which everyone had, I made that my business number, and now I have it through Vonage, and I can log into the Vonage platform on my laptop, on my phone, and get calls through that number. But I also have a personal number that clients don't have. So that's really important. And then other than that, it's just more like operating procedures to be functional and effective, which I can go over on a separate webinar to be effective as far as like the workflow goes.
Okay. And what about, obviously I know you're a heavy user of Track with Ease. Could you just talk a little bit about how you use Track with Ease? How does that help, in this whole solution space of the different pieces that you need?
Sure. So it's so helpful because it's a place where a lot of the business partners that we work with and the clients, it feels like it's our office. So like they can log in and they can see all of the files and they can see everything that's happening and what needs to be done by when. So instead of, say, coming to my office and asking me like how things are going, clients can send me an email and ask me that same question, and I can direct them to either log into Track with Ease, or I can send them a milestone update. And it's just incredibly helpful with the organization of the files and having everything, again, be paperless. I don't have files. When I go to a closing, I know there's times that I see attorneys walk in with their big briefcase with all the papers, and I just have my laptop. It's so different. But if we're at the table and we need to reference a document, I just open it up, I go into Track with Ease, and everything's there. I also mirror what's in Track with Ease with Google Drive, and I have all my folders on Google Drive with all the documents as well, as needed. But Track with Ease just makes it a little more organized, because I might be asked to reference something like a closing date, which now with Track with Ease, I don't have to go into a document like the contract or attorney review to find it. It's right in Track with Ease in the milestones. So it's less opening of things and digging, which can take a lot of time for an attorney to have to deal with.
So if an attorney firm has made the decision, they want to move more to a remote working have that flexibility and benefit from the efficiencies and so on. What are certain can you advise anybody who's listening that are there certain mistakes or pitfalls that you would counsel them to be careful not to fall afoul of?
Mm-hmm. So not having just kind of operating procedures, not losing a sense of what you've done at your office. So I'd say sit down and take some time to really think of how things flow at your office and how you can envision that happening at home or wherever you're working from, which in this case right now would be home. And then taking that and if you have a staff or a team, kind of drafting it into, like a written procedure almost, and having it be accessible to your staff and your team, so they can see how, either if things are going to change, how they will change, and then two, if not, how things will stay the same, but how they can interact with you virtually. So I think just not having standard operating procedures is really huge, because you can just kind of get lost in email and not really know what to do from there. Two is not having the proper software. So if you're a busy practice and you're going from office to virtual, you need something like Track with Ease to help you manage your softwares and your files. There's no way that you're going to be able to handle it without having drawers of paperwork and stuff. And even then, it's still helpful to have. So having the proper software is key. And then the last thing is not having the idea of customer service added to the workflow. Again, so it's not just moving your office to being virtual. I think a lot of what I'm seeing from some attorneys that I'm interacting with is kind of this is an opportunity for a little vacation. And they're just kind of not available. But it's been very difficult to get some transactions closed that at this point, every day matters with real estate transactions. We don't know what's going to happen. I have clients in New York who might be quarantined and unable to even travel to New Jersey. So kind of having yourself be available to your clients and using the time to think how I can be best and communicate to my clients in a way that gives them excellent customer service. It's really helpful, and a mistake that a lot of people make when they go virtual.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for responding to those questions, Ashley. What I want to do now is just move to any sort of Q&A questions that anybody has. If you have any questions, please enter it into the chat in the Zoom. So please just add your questions there, and I'll ask your questions on your behalf, and then we'll wrap up. So I guess the first question is is how much of your time in a day do you spend entering data into the platform? Because obviously, I guess the nature of how you're working is changing a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So I have a staff member who does it for me, but there's different stages of the transactions where you have to enter the data in. So I can't say exactly on the day that there's an average because every day is different. But let's say just when I have a new file, in Track with Ease, we start the track. So the track gets started, and I'd say that takes my assistant maybe 5 to 10 minutes to get that done. The next time that we're inputting data into Track with Ease is after attorney review is over and we have all the milestones ready to be calculated. And that takes maybe more like 10 to 30 minutes, depending on how much there needs to be digging through attorney review letter, like provisions and what's changed and what hasn't. So that could take about like 30 minutes. And then as far as things coming in the door, we try to update Track with These the second like a milestone comes in. My team, we communicate it to each other, and one of my assistants will go into Track with These and mark it complete. So I'd say on average, maybe no more than an hour of inputting data, and that would be a lot.
Okay, and just another question. In terms, this is somebody saying that they're not so tech savvy.
Mm-hmm.
What should they do to start with? Where do they start?
So it depends on the not tech savviness, but I'd say just jumping into the email and having email be set. But then if you're trying to use Track with Ease and you haven't really utilized it to its advantage, maybe if you've signed up for it but you're not using it, I'd say setting up a demo with one of you guys would be really great to kind of get the usability comfortable for you. And really just kind of being compassionate with yourself and giving yourself some time, like early on in the morning when it's quiet or the weekends, to kind of just get comfortable and just start using things. Because what I found from shifting from one software to another, that whether you're tech savvy or you're not, there's always something new and something that's uncomfortable. And I think it's just kind of getting over that hurdle of learning that something new that you need to just give yourself the time and the space for. And just kind of getting out of that idea that thinking I'm not tech savvy, right? So just changing your perspective to, I will be tech savvy. It's time. I'm ready to do it. And then setting that intention and taking it from there. Okay.
So another question then is, which I think I've heard this question myself a number of times when I've spoken to various attorney firms,
mm-hmm.
Which is, I think, a really great question, is that where do I, if I have a number of files right now, I have a number of transactions that are in progress,
mm-hmm.
30 or 40 transactions that are in progress. Do I need to transfer all those old files into Track with Ease before I start? And obviously that is a bit of a daunting task potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to respond to that question myself, but I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are.
Sure. Well, I started with Track with Ease with a lot of files, and I had to kind of take my practice from non-Track with Ease life to Track with Ease life. And from what I remember, I took the files that were early on in the process that maybe were even in inspections phase, and I did input them into Track with Ease, and I took the time to do that. And actually, I was doing it all myself at the time. I didn't have anyone working for me as an assistant at that time. And it helped me actually a lot to get comfortable with the program and to kind of, because I had also like 30 to 40 files that I needed to input. And I with one file, it was slow, and then I got faster and faster at it as each went on. And I had a conversation with each of my clients, very brief, but I like tagged it on to a meeting that I was having with them about something else, and just let them know, hey, I'm using this new software and it's really great. You can log in and all of our documents are going to be in there. So anything that you have sent me, it'll be there. You can also upload the documents there yourself. And some clients love it. So watching them do that just kind of kept me inspired to keep going. And then eventually I weeded out all the files that I didn't use Track with Ease for, and now everything is in there.
Okay. No, I mean, that's, I think that's a really good approach. I mean, I think, obviously, we don't recommend that people transfer everything across immediately. I think it makes sense either to start with new files, just put new files on there, or if they're relatively new files, I think as it was the case that in your case, Ashley, but that is really probably the most pragmatic way to start off. Just one other question in terms of the standardization of your sort of business process, because I think one of the aspects of a services business, which really, an attorney firm is a services business. It's providing a service to clients, to realtors, to various different stakeholders, title companies, all those different parties that you're involved with.
Yeah.
One of the real tricks to creating a really great services business is about the consistency of what you're delivering. And in order to deliver a consistent service, you need to be able to define that proposition and monitor it. So you started off, you were by yourself, you've added staff. How have you been able to standardize and create a consistent service, even though you have a much bigger team involved?
So I basically taught them everything that I was doing without them. And my need for them was because I was expanding. So I tried to envision everything that I was doing and to take it all from my head and put it onto paper so that I could teach someone else how to do what I do. And it is a living, breathing process. It's constantly changing. It changes more like with tweaks now than it did in the beginning. But really taking what you're already doing and putting it on paper is so important. And so it's really been helpful for me to also kind of see the gaps that I don't see when I'm just kind of going with the motions. When I start to think to myself, like, what is the journey of my client with me? And honestly, that work I do on the weekends, or again, really early in the morning or late at night when it's quiet. There's definitely no way for me to be able to do that work with a lot of files between like the hours of 9 to 5. But there are some times that I set aside on the weekend to really sit down, and now I do it pretty much like every couple of months, where I'll sit down, I'll think, what is my client's journey, and not just my clients, but the journey of the file as it relates to me in my office. So I think from the first interaction, my first conversation with them, how do they contact me? How can I make even just that process as streamlined as possible? So I tell all my agents how it's best for them to refer me so that they can fit into the system that I'm setting up that I know will be best for my clients. And then going from there forward. So it's really like breaking apart everything that you do and thinking about it like in very, very, very small steps, and writing it down and then teaching it to like whoever it is that you have supporting you. And then if you're virtual, having technology there to support you. So I use Slack to communicate with my staff, and I also use Google Docs where I have this really intense task log that's like a master task log for all the things that are the in-between things that I don't have in Track with Ease. And if it's something that has like due dates, we put it into the track with these tasks that have due dates, and we do that. But I think really just having as much control over your process and your communication with your staff is really important.
Okay, so Ashley, we're starting to run a little bit short of time, so I want to finish on time because we're very grateful that people have dedicated some of their evening with us. Just a couple of final questions, and if you would, and then just a sort of a quick final couple of points from me. But just one question from I'm not sure who it's from, but it's essentially one of the parties listening is interested to get a bit more of a concrete example of exactly how you use Track with Ease. So could you just talk through a little bit, maybe the life cycle of a deal, just quite quickly, but just the sort of the key points of how you kind of marshal the deal through the process of using Track with Ease.
Sure. So we, as I stated before, we have a new file that comes in. As soon as it comes in, we get all the party information and we start the track. All the invites will go out to have people sign up for the Track with Ease while the track has been created and attorney reviews going on. We send out our first attorney review letter through Track with Ease. And then once attorney review concludes, we use all the review letters to set up the milestones, because as everybody knows, things change during attorney review, like mortgage commitment dates, closing dates, and stuff like that. After we do that, we send out the milestone email, the first one that ever goes out, which is kind of like the new and improved next steps letter that attorneys will send out. So that goes out, and the milestones, I have I have my own milestone template that I've kind of created, and each milestone has its own text with either requests for things like the CO or instructions for the deposit for the client. We also have like a milestone for when title comes in. We send this explanation to clients what title is, because I found that just sending out the milestone that title has been received, my clients will email me and be like, what is this? This is so many pages. I don't understand anything in here. Can we talk about this? And they'll want to have a 2-hour phone conference about the title binder. So to prevent that, I have a text that I send them explaining them that this is just the title binder. You don't need to do anything with it. We'll reach out to you if there's anything that needs to be done. So kind of managing their expectations. So all of my milestones are kind of finessed in that way. And I guess after that, it kind of works for me. The only thing I have to do is check off milestones that are completed. And then also, if things change, like if a closing date needs to be moved, we have to make sure we update Track with Ease, because if we want people to rely on Track with Ease the way we do, if we don't update it as we go along, then people will be disappointed and they'll not, it'll be diluted, right? So we make sure that we update things, we remove lead-based paint if it's not needed and stuff like that. And I'm definitely happy to, I'm going to be doing another webinar myself, teaching more about my process and how to be virtual and use Track with Ease. So I'll drop my email into the chat, and if anybody would like to be a part of that more thorough, next step webinar to this one, you can feel free to contact me, and I'll include you in the email list and the invite.
Excellent. Well, one final question. So in terms of your business, do you feel like you've seen any increase in your business volumes as a function of using Track with Ease? And if you're able to work more efficiently, has that led to an increased level of business?
Yes, definitely. I spend a lot less time, one, in my head, and two, in action, following up with things that are very administrative almost. And then not just that, managing the client expectations has relieved a lot of time to need to be on the phone explaining things to clients. I find that I really don't have as much time on the phone as I used to, which frees up so much more space for me to network with more people. And also just I think that when you create space things come your way. It just kind of happens. So we started implementing the Track with Ease, and without even having to actually go out and network directly, people heard and felt that we were more efficient. And so we started being referred more and more because people were pleased with us. And I've had people, and I know that you guys talk about this, I think when you talk to new attorneys for Track with Ease, Mark, is that when there's people on the other side of deals, they have such a good experience that they might switch to the attorney who's using Track with Ease. And we've actually experienced that quite often, where the other side felt like we were communicating so well. And agents, a lot of agents are very, very high touch now and really involved in their transactions. And I mean, for a real estate attorney, it's so important to have the agents be as happy as we can make them, given the constraints that we have to, be attorneys and tell them the way things are supposed to be. But having them be happy is really what brings more business our way. We've definitely increased our ability to handle more work.
Yeah. I guess those realtors are really anxious to get their commission checks and
so anxious.
Make sure everything goes smoothly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. You've been really wonderful. Appreciate all your insights and sharing all the information you have with everybody. I was going to ask you, but you've already offered it. But in terms of, if anybody wants to follow up with you, or if they would like more information, is there a way to get hold of you? But you've already shared your email address, so
yes.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, please reach out. I'm really open to helping everyone, and this is a really big passion of mine, so love to share more, and excited to do a next level webinar with more information. I'll share my screen and kind of give more concrete examples of the things that I do, and I'm really happy to do that. And thank you everyone as well.
And I guess just finally, if you'd like more information about Track with Ease, please go to the website, www.trackwithease.com. There is a button there, quite a prominent magenta button, which is to request a demo. If you'd like a demo, we'll give you a personalized demo and really talk through, give you a very realistic examples of how it could be used in your firm and even with your branding and so on, and really help you to embrace this application that's been developed for you. It's been developed specifically for attorneys doing real estate transactions. If you do sign up, there's no risk. If it doesn't work out, then we happily cancel, but nobody ever has. And we also give you some onboarding support. So when you get started, you'll get couple of sessions of onboarding. It's pretty quick. In 30 minutes, you can really get going and start to get some of the benefits straight away. There are also some resourceful videos that you can refer to if you'd like to. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening, and be safe, and be safe with all your families as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.